I stood there in my wedding dress watching my sister kiss my groom at the altar while 200 guests gasped in horror. But when I walked to the microphone and played the recording from last night, she went from confident to collapsed on the floor, begging me to stop. My name is Delilah. I'm 28 years old and I work as a marketing director at a tech company in Boston. The man my sister was kissing? That's Preston, 30 years old, supposedly the love of my life and my fiancé for the past year and a half. We've been together for 3 years total, living in our apartment overlooking the Charles River, planning our future with the kind of detail that made our friends roll their eyes. He works in finance, drives a Tesla he's oddly proud of, and has this habit of humming when he cooks Sunday breakfast. The woman destroying my wedding in a dusty rose bridesmaid dress? That's my younger sister Waverly. 26 years old, works as a pharmaceutical sales rep, lives in a luxury high-rise our parents helped pay for, and has this perfect smile that's gotten her out of every single mess she's ever created. Growing up, she was the one who got away with breaking Mom's favorite vase, stealing my prom date, and somehow convincing our parents that I was the one who scratched Dad's car when she took it for a joyride at 16. Standing in the front row with her hand over her mouth is my mother, Nadine, 52 years old, retired ballet instructor, and the woman who once told me at my college graduation that Waverly would have given a better valedictorian speech. Next to her, my father, Gerald, 54, owns 3 hardware stores and has spent his entire marriage trying to keep the peace between his wife and daughters. The only person not looking shocked in that moment was Simone, my best friend since sophomore year of high school and my maid of honor. She stood behind me, holding my bouquet in one hand and her phone in the other, recording everything just like we'd planned, because I knew something was coming. I just didn't know my sister would be bold enough to do it in front of everyone we knew. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why I was prepared for my sister to ruin my wedding, you need to know what happened in the 3 days leading up to this moment. You need to know about the overheard phone call, the missing wedding rings, and the rehearsal dinner where Waverly gave a toast that made my future mother-in-law cry. You need to know why I had a recording device hidden in the flower arrangement at the rehearsal venue, and why Simone and I stayed up until 3 a.m. listening to what we captured. Most importantly, you need to know that when my sister grabbed Preston's face and kissed him at my wedding, he didn't push her away for exactly 7 seconds. I counted. Everyone counted. My grandmother actually dropped her oxygen tank. She was so shocked. And in those 7 seconds, I made a decision that would change everything. Because you see, Waverly thought she was the only one with a secret. She thought she was the smartest person in that garden venue, playing chess while the rest of us played checkers. What she didn't know was that Preston had already confessed everything to me the night before, sobbing in our hotel bathroom after he thought I was asleep. What she didn't know was that I'd hired a private investigator 3 weeks earlier when I noticed strange charges on our joint credit card. What she didn't know was that our mother, Nadine, had come to my room that very morning, warning me that Waverly was planning something. "Your sister's been acting strange," Mom had said while Simone curled my hair. "She keeps smiling at herself in the mirror and practicing some kind of speech." The wedding was supposed to start at 4 p.m. at the Rosewood Garden venue, the place where our parents had renewed their vows 10 years ago. 200 guests, a string quartet, roses flown in from Ecuador, and a cake that cost more than some people's monthly rent. Everything was perfect on paper. The weather was exactly 72 degrees with a light breeze. The photographers were getting those golden hour shots everyone dreams about. My dress, a custom Vera Wang that took 6 months to alter, fit like it was painted on. But perfection is often just a pretty mask for chaos, and chaos has always been my sister's specialty. What happened next would become the most watched wedding disaster in TikTok history, the subject of 1,000 Reddit threads, and the reason my story ended up being optioned for a Netflix limited series. But in that moment, standing at my own altar watching my sister kiss my groom, all I could think about was my grandmother's words from when I was 12. "Sweet girl, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. When they show you twice, make sure everyone else sees it too." So that's exactly what I did. I'd been planning this June wedding for 18 months, and every detail had been scrutinized, perfected, and approved by the small army of vendors I'd hired. Preston proposed at Marina Bay Restaurant on March 15th of last year, getting down on one knee right as the sun painted the harbor gold. He'd coordinated with the waitstaff, the guitarist, even the couple at the next table who conveniently started recording just as he pulled out the ring box. The 2-carat oval diamond had belonged to his grandmother, reset in a modern platinum setting that somehow made it both vintage and contemporary. I said yes before he even finished asking. We'd met at our mutual friend Jackson's housewarming party 4 years ago. Preston was standing by the kitchen island, arguing with someone about cryptocurrency while wearing a shirt that was clearly too small for him. I remember thinking he was trying too hard until he caught me laughing at his passionate defense of Bitcoin and completely forgot his argument mid-sentence. "You think I'm ridiculous," he'd said, walking over with 2 glasses of wine he'd grabbed from the counter. "I think you're wearing your teenage brother's shirt," I replied, taking the glass. He looked down at himself and laughed, this genuine, unself-conscious sound that made everyone turn. It shrunk in the dryer, but I figured if I left the party to change, I might miss meeting someone important. That was Preston's gift, making you feel like you were the only person in the room who mattered. For 3 years, he'd maintained that focus, that intensity that made my friends say things like, "Does he have a brother? And you're so lucky, Delilah." My younger sister Waverly had been oddly supportive throughout our engagement, which should have triggered every alarm bell in my head. Growing up in our colonial house in Wellesley, Waverly was the golden child who could do no wrong. She got the solos in choir, the lead in every school play, the full scholarship to Boston University, while I took out student loans for Northeastern. Our mother, Nadine, would display Waverly's trophies in the living room while my academic achievement awards got relegated to the hallway nobody used. "Waverly just has that special something," Mom would say at family dinners, usually right after my sister finished telling some story about her latest accomplishment. "She lights up a room. You understand, don't you, Delilah? You're the smart one, the reliable one. Different strengths. Different strengths." Translation, Waverly was the star, I was the supporting cast. But Preston had chosen me. He'd met Waverly dozens of times at family dinners, holiday parties, and summer barbecues, and he'd never shown anything more than polite interest in her stories about pharmaceutical sales conferences and her rotating cast of boyfriends with trust funds. The morning of my wedding, I was in the bridal suite at the Rosewood Hotel, a space bigger than my first apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens where I'd soon be married. My bridesmaids were scattered around the room. Simone was organizing the jewelry, my cousin Bethany was steaming the hem of her dress, and my college roommate Tessa was documenting everything on Instagram. My mother arrived at 9 sharp, carrying her mother-of-the-bride outfit in a garment bag like it contained state secrets. "Delilah, darling, you're not wearing your hair completely up, are you? You know your face looks rounder when you pull it all back." "The hairstylist has it under control, Mom," I said, sipping champagne despite the early hour. That's when Waverly burst in, already in full makeup and her bridesmaid dress, looking like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. The dusty rose color that looked merely pretty on everyone else somehow made her look ethereal. "Delilah, you look absolutely radiant," she said, but her smile was performance art, all teeth and no warmth. "Preston's a lucky man, or should I say a very lucky man to have convinced you to marry him." Simone caught my eye in the mirror, her expression asking if she should intervene. I gave her the tiniest shake of my head. "Thanks, Wave," I said, using the childhood nickname she hated. "That means so much coming from you." She walked over to the window, posing casually in a way that made sure everyone could see her figure in the fitted dress. "You know, I was just thinking about how funny life is, how people end up with people you'd never expect. Like, who would have thought Preston would end up with someone so stable, so practical?" My mother actually clapped. "That's what I've always said. Delilah got the common sense in the family. Someone has to, right?" The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with hairspray and something else, something that made my stomach twist. But I pushed it aside. This was my day. In 3 hours, I'd be married to Preston, and Waverly would just be another guest at my perfect wedding. I had no idea she'd already planned to make herself the main event. The ceremony started beautifully at exactly 4 o'clock. The string quartet played Pachelbel's Canon as my bridesmaids walked down the aisle, each carrying bouquets of white peonies and eucalyptus. The garden venue looked like something from a magazine. White chairs in perfect rows, an archway draped with roses and baby's breath, and the late afternoon sun filtering through the oak trees like nature's own spotlight. My father Gerald met me at the entrance, tears already forming in his eyes. "You've never looked happier, sweetheart," he whispered, offering me his arm. "Your mother and I are so proud of you." As we walked, I saw everyone I loved. My grandmother in the front row wearing her lucky pearls, Preston's parents beaming from across the aisle, my boss who'd given me the week off despite our biggest product launch, and my college friends who'd flown in from Seattle. Preston stood at the altar, his hands clasped in front of him, tears streaming down his face as I approached. His best man, his brother Camden, handed him a tissue and whispered something that made him laugh through the tears. We made it through the processional, the welcome message from the officiant, and the readings. Preston's cousin read from Corinthians, my aunt shared a Maya Angelou poem, and everything was going according to the script we'd rehearsed the night before. Preston and I faced each other, holding hands, and I could feel his pulse racing through his palms. "Delilah," Preston began his vows, his voice strong and clear, "you walked into my life when I was pretending to know everything about everything, and you saw right through me. You've made me a better man, a more honest man, and I promise to spend every day earning the love you've given me." I was halfway through my own vows, telling the story of how he'd tried to cook me dinner on our third date and nearly burned down his apartment, when the officiant reached the part everyone jokes about, but nobody expects to matter. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. The pause lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then Waverly stood up from her position with the bridesmaids. "I do," she announced, her voice cutting through the garden like a blade. "I object because the groom is my ex-boyfriend, and he's still in love with me." The collective gasp from 200 guests sounded like wind through the trees. My grandmother's hand flew to her chest. Preston's mother actually stood up, then sat back down. My father took a step forward from his front row seat, his face shifting from confusion to rage. "Waverly, what are you doing?" my mother Nadine hissed, loud enough for the first 5 rows to hear. But Waverly was already moving, walking straight toward Preston and me at the altar. Her heels clicked against the stone pathway, each step deliberate and measured. She'd practiced this. "I'm sorry, Delilah," she said, though her tone suggested anything but remorse. "But you deserve to know the truth. Preston and I dated for 2 years before he met you. We never really ended things. We've been meeting up this whole time." Preston's face went white, then red, then white again. "Waverly, don't do this," he said, his voice barely carrying past the altar. "Tell her, Preston," Waverly continued, now standing directly in front of us. "Tell her about the nights you called me crying because you felt trapped. Tell her about last month when you showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m. "That's not what happened," Preston said, but his voice cracked, and in that crack, I heard doubt ripple through the crowd. Then Waverly did it. She grabbed Preston's face with both hands and kissed him. Not a quick peck, not a brief touch of lips, but a full, passionate kiss, like something from a movie. The kind of kiss that suggests familiarity, history, practice. Preston stood frozen for exactly 7 seconds. I know because I counted them, each second stretching like an hour. 1 Mississippi. His hands stayed at his sides. 2 Mississippi. The crowd erupted in shocked voices. 3 Mississippi. My father started walking toward us. 4 Mississippi. Simone stepped forward with her phone. 5 Mississippi. Preston's hands finally moved to Waverly's shoulders. 6 Mississippi. He seemed to be pushing or pulling. Nobody could tell. 7 Mississippi. They finally separated. When Waverly pulled away, she turned to me with this triumphant expression, like she just won a game I didn't know we were playing. Her lipstick was smeared, and there was a trace of it on Preston's mouth. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But I couldn't let you marry him without knowing the truth. We've been in love this whole time. He was just too afraid to admit it." The garden erupted. Preston's mother was crying. My cousins were standing on their chairs to see better. Someone's child started wailing, and in the middle of it all, I stood in my $6,000 dress, holding a bouquet that suddenly felt as heavy as concrete, staring at the lipstick on my fiancé's mouth. I felt 200 pairs of eyes on me, waiting to see if I'd cry, scream, slap someone, or run. My grandmother was clutching her pearls so tight I thought they might break. Preston's mother had buried her face in her husband's shoulder. The photographer was still shooting, his camera clicking like a rapid heartbeat, probably thinking he'd just captured the wedding photo of the century. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't run. Instead, I looked at Simone, who was already moving toward me with the precision of someone executing a military operation. She reached into her bouquet, not for tissues or smelling salts, but for something small and metallic that she pressed into my palm. A USB drive, purple and innocent looking, like something you'd use for a school presentation. "Delilah, please let me explain." Preston started, reaching for my hand. His voice was desperate now, nothing like the confident man who'd just promised to be honest with me for the rest of our lives. I pulled my hand away and began removing my veil, slowly and deliberately, letting each bobby pin drop to the ground with a tiny ping that somehow echoed in the sudden silence. My mother stood up, probably to rush over and fix whatever she thought was broken, but my father grabbed her arm and held her in place. "Delilah, don't be dramatic," Waverly said, her voice taking on that condescending tone she'd perfected when we were kids. "I know this is hard, but you needed to know. Better now than after you're married, right? I'm actually doing you a favor." I handed my bouquet to Simone and walked to the microphone the DJ had set up for speeches later. My train dragged behind me, picking up rose petals from the aisle. The sound system gave a small squeal of feedback when I tapped the microphone, making everyone flinch. "Thank you for that performance, Waverly," I said, my voice steady and clear through the speakers. "Really impressive timing. The kiss was a nice touch. Very telenovela. I'm sure our cousins from New Jersey are getting their money's worth for the plane tickets." A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. Waverly's triumphant expression wavered slightly. "But before we all jump to conclusions," I continued, holding up the USB drive so everyone could see it, "I think everyone should hear something. You see, I had a feeling something might happen today. Call it sister's intuition." Preston started walking toward me, his hands out like he was approaching a spooked horse. "Delilah, whatever you think you know, whatever she told you, it's not the whole story." "Stay right there, Preston," I said into the microphone, my voice sharp enough to stop him mid-step. "This concerns you, too. Actually, why don't you stand right next to Waverly? You look so good together. The photographer should get a shot." The DJ, a young guy named Tyler who'd done my cousin's wedding last year, looked at me with wide eyes when I approached his booth. "You want me to play this? Right now?" "Right now," I said, handing him the USB. "Track 1. Full volume." Waverly's face had gone from triumphant to uncertain. "What are you doing?" "Delilah, if this is some slideshow of us as kids or something sentimental, that's sweet, but we need to talk about what just happened." "Oh, we're going to talk about what happened," I said, returning to the microphone. "We're going to talk about exactly what happened last night at the rehearsal dinner venue, after everyone left. You remember, Waverly, when you forgot your purse? And Preston, when you stayed behind to check on arrangements?" Preston's face drained of all color. He looked like he might vomit right there on the rose petals. "You see," I said, addressing the crowd now, "I've been suspicious for about 3 weeks. Little things. Preston suddenly working late, Waverly showing up at our apartment when she knew I wouldn't be home, the text messages Preston would delete, the way they looked at each other at my birthday dinner last month." My mother stood up. "Delilah, sweetheart, maybe we should discuss this privately." "No, Mom," I said. "Waverly wanted to make this public. She stood up in front of everyone. She made her announcement. She kissed him in front of our family, our friends, my boss, Preston's 90-year-old grandmother, so let's keep it public." I nodded to Tyler. He clicked his laptop, and the garden speaker system came to life with the sound of a door closing, footsteps, and then voices, crystal clear voices. "Before we play this," I said, looking directly at Waverly, "I want you to know that you were right about one thing. The truth should come out. Everyone deserves to know exactly who they're dealing with. So thank you, sister, for giving me the perfect opportunity to share what I learned last night. The recording was about to change everything, and from the look on Waverly's face, she was just beginning to realize she'd walked into a trap of her own making. The recording started with the sound of a door closing and heels clicking on marble. The audio quality was perfect, courtesy of the professional-grade recorder Simone had hidden in the flower arrangement centerpiece at the rehearsal dinner venue. Waverly's voice filled the garden, clear as if she were speaking into the microphone herself. "I can't believe you're actually going through with this." Preston's response came through the speakers. "We've been over this, Waverly. You're the one who dumped me 3 years ago for that investment banker. Remember? Harrison with the yacht and the house in the Hamptons? Because you were broke," Waverly's recorded voice shot back. "You were bartending and talking about maybe going back to school. But look at you now. Successful, established, making 6 figures. Delilah really helped you become someone worth marrying." In the present, the real Waverly had gone pale. She started toward the DJ booth, but my father stepped into her path. "You're going to want to hear this, sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying a warning. The recording continued. Preston's voice, "Don't talk about her like that. I love Delilah." "No, you love the idea of her," Waverly responded in the recording. "The stability, the family connections, her father's hardware store empire that you'll probably inherit part of someday. But we both know who you really want. When I kiss you tomorrow at the ceremony, you won't push me away. You never could resist me." The crowd gasped. Preston's mother stood up and walked out, her husband chasing after her. Preston himself stood frozen at the altar, looking like he'd been turned to stone. "You're not going to— Waverly, that's insane," Preston's voice protested in the recording. "I'm going to object," Waverly's voice explained her plan methodically. "Tell everyone you're my ex and kiss you. And when you kiss me back, because you will, Delilah will be devastated. She'll call off the wedding, and after a few months of comfort, you and I can start over. Publicly. Mother will be thrilled. She always thought you were too good for Delilah anyway." I looked at my mother, Nadine. She had tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed to her mouth. The recording wasn't done. "You're sick," Preston's voice said. "I won't let you ruin her day. You don't have to let me do anything, just don't push me away when I kiss you, that's all. Your body will do the rest. It always did." There was a pause in the recording. Then Preston's voice came back, different now, harder. "Fine. You want to know the truth? I did love you once, but you killed that love when you left me for money. Delilah showed me what real love looks like. So go ahead, try your little stunt. I'll tell everyone exactly what kind of person you are." Waverly's laugh crackled through the speakers, ugly and sharp. "You wouldn't dare. You forget, I know about the gambling debt, the money you borrowed from Delilah's father to pay it off. Should I tell her that? Should I tell her daddy that his future son-in-law owes $40,000 to some very unhappy people?" I clicked off the recording and turned to my father. "Dad, did Preston borrow money from you?" My father stood up slowly, his voice carrying across the silent garden. "He did, 2 years ago. Came to my office, hands shaking, and told me everything. He'd gotten in over his head with online poker, trying to make quick money to buy Delilah a proper engagement ring." He looked at Preston with something like pity. "He paid back every penny with interest in 6 months, took extra shifts, sold his car, moved to a studio apartment, asked me not to tell you because he wanted to earn my respect first. But I knew," I said into the microphone. "I knew because you taught me to read financial documents, Dad. I saw the loan agreement in your home office. I also knew because Preston told me last night, after he thought I was asleep. He was crying in our hotel bathroom, confessing everything." Waverly had collapsed into a bridesmaid chair, her face in her hands. But I wasn't done. "There's more on the recording," I announced. "The part where Waverly admits to sleeping with my prom date to prove she could. The part where she laughs about stealing my college scholarship letter and hiding it until after the deadline. The part where she describes putting peanut oil in my food when I was 12, knowing I was allergic, just to get attention when I went to the hospital." "Stop," Waverly sobbed. "Please, Delilah, stop." "The same word I used when I couldn't breathe from anaphylaxis," I said. The same word I said when you told everyone I cheated on my SATs, when you were the one who paid someone to take yours. The garden was silent except for Waverly's crying and the wind in the trees. 200 guests sat frozen, watching the complete destruction of my wedding and my family. But here's the thing, I said, setting down the microphone and walking toward my sister. You did me a favor today, Waverly. You showed me exactly who you both are. I looked out at the crowd of stunned faces, my family, my friends, my coworkers, all frozen in their seats like they were watching a car crash in slow motion. But instead of devastation washing over me, I felt something unexpected. Complete and total freedom. Preston, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying clear and strong, you're right. You were a coward. You knew what she was planning, and instead of telling me, you thought you could handle it. You thought you could manage her like she was some business deal gone wrong. But Waverly, you're something worse. You're someone who would destroy her own sister's happiness out of spite, jealousy, and greed. My mother Nadine finally stood up, her makeup running in black streams down her cheeks. Delilah, darling, don't be dramatic. Waverly made a mistake. We can fix this. We can talk about this as a family. No, Mom, I said, cutting her off. Waverly executed a plan, a detailed, thought-out plan to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. And you know what? She actually did me a favor. She showed me that Preston could be manipulated, that he'd keep secrets to save face, and that my own sister would rather see me destroyed than happy. I turned back to the crowd. These people who'd traveled from across the country, who'd bought gifts and booked hotel rooms and taken time off work. The wedding is off, obviously, but this reception cost $38,000. The food is exquisite. We have lobster and filet mignon. The bar is fully stocked with top-shelf everything. The band drove up from New York. Everyone except Waverly and Preston is welcome to stay and celebrate. Celebrate what? Someone called out from the back. My Independence Day, I said, and surprised myself by smiling. The day I learned the truth before making the biggest mistake of my life. Simone appeared at my side with a champagne glass, filled to the brim. I raised it high, the late afternoon sun catching the bubbles like tiny diamonds. To the truth, I said. However painful, it's better than a beautiful lie. The silence lasted another beat, then my grandmother, 91 years old with a voice that could still fill a room, stood up and raised her own glass. To my granddaughter, who just showed more backbone than most people manage in a lifetime. The applause started slowly, then built to something thunderous. My father walked to the microphone and announced, "The father of the bride invites everyone to enjoy the party, and Waverly, Preston, Gerald suggests you leave. Now." 6 months later, I'm sitting in my corner office at my own marketing firm, the one I started with the money I'd saved for the honeymoon and the refunded deposits from the canceled wedding. Turns out, when your wedding disaster goes viral on TikTok with 20 million views, people want to hire the woman who handled it with that much composure. My company tagline? Truth in advertising. Preston sent letters for 3 months straight, flowers every Friday, even showed up at my parents' house on Thanksgiving, but my father met him at the door and told him to leave before he called the police. I heard through mutual friends that he's in therapy now, trying to figure out why he let himself be manipulated so easily. Good for him, I guess, but it's not my problem anymore. Waverly tried to spin the story on social media, posting about how I'd entrapped her and edited the recording. But when I posted the full, unedited 43-minute conversation online, including the part where she detailed 5 other times she'd sabotaged my relationships, she deleted all her accounts. She moved to Portland last I heard, working at a different pharmaceutical company under our mother's maiden name. My mother, Nadine, came to my apartment last month with a box of childhood photos and a tearful apology. "I created this monster," she said, sitting on my couch and looking older than I'd ever seen her. "I made Waverly believe she had to have everything, even things that weren't hers. I put you girls against each other from the start, always comparing, always making it a competition. I'm the reason she became this way." "Maybe," I said, sitting beside her, "but she made her choices, and you made yours." The videographer who kept filming through the entire disaster actually won an award for documentary footage. The video went beyond TikTok, ending up on Reddit, YouTube, even the news. The caption that went viral read, "Bride exposes sister's evil plan at her own wedding with secret recording." The comment section became a support group for people who'd been betrayed by family members. I learned that sometimes the worst moments of your life are actually gifts in disguise. That wedding disaster saved me from a lifetime with someone who couldn't stand up for me. And it finally showed everyone who Waverly really was beneath her perfect exterior. It taught me that when someone shows you who they are, you don't just believe them. You make sure everyone else sees it too. The best part? 3 weeks ago, I met someone at a coffee shop. He'd seen the video and recognized me. "You're the woman who played that recording at your wedding," he said. That took serious courage. "We're having dinner tomorrow night." He seems nice, honest, and best of all, he's an only child. My story reminds people to look closer at those they trust, to value truth over comfort, and to never let anyone dim their light, even if that someone shares your DNA, especially if that someone shares your DNA. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that standing up for yourself is always worth it. Comment below if you've ever had to expose a family member's lies, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about people who chose truth over comfort, dignity over drama, and freedom over false happiness. Because sometimes the best wedding gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away.